So in this video today, I'm going to talk to you about how long it takes to go through probate. And the short answer is it's going to take a minimum of 6 months in most instances, but sometimes it can take a lot longer than that. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you and talk to you generally about the process. So the first thing that we do when we start a probate is we have to gather information about what the decedent owned at their death, and we need to find their will, determine if they had a will. And with that information, we can prepare the probate petition. Our client will sign the petition. And then what we'll do is we'll file that with the courthouse. So that's the first step. We file the petition. And then the court writes back, and with the formal probate, they'll provide us notice of the date that we're going to have the hearing. And that's usually 2 to 3 months after the initial petition is filed. However, it just depends upon how backed up the court is when that hearing's going to happen. If it's an emergency and we need to get someone appointed right away, you can go through a special administration, but that is more costly. You have to do a special administration and then do a probate. You have to do both. So in most instances, we'll just do a probate. And so when the court writes back and says, your hearing is X date, then we have to provide notice of that hearing to all the interested persons. So that would include family of the decedent, include creditors of the decedent, and some other people, like if a charity's inheriting, the Attorney General's office, or if they were foreign born, the consulate of that country. So a couple different places you have to provide notice. And you also have to provide notice in a newspaper. And so we have to publish notice in a newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks, with the last publication running at least 10 days before the hearing. So there's this time in advance of the hearing that the newspaper publication is running. And the notice has to be given via mail to people, to these interested people, and that has to happen at least 10 days before the hearing. So then the hearing happens, county by county, some counties require that our clients attend with us, and other counties don't require that the clients attend with us. If the appointment is non-contested and everything's filled out correctly, at that hearing, generally the judge will just appoint our client to serve as personal representative or executor, okay? And then what they'll do is, in step number 3, the court will sign the order and the letters testamentary, appointing that person, giving them the authority to start collecting the assets of the deceased person and paying their bills, okay? So then we move on to step number 4, where we're in the creditors period. The creditors period lasts 4 months from the date of the initial newspaper publication, okay? So now we're 4 months out from that. And in that period, if the person who died had anybody that they owed money that wasn't paid off, maybe this is an unpaid credit card, maybe this is a mortgage, that creditor can come forward in that 4-month period and put a claim on the estate. So it's this this paperwork that they file with the court records indicating the deceased person owed me money. I'd like to get paid now. So after 4 months, we check the court records and make sure that there aren't any claims on the estate. If there are claims, then after the 4 months, those claims have to be paid off, or they're contested. You know, like if someone comes forward and said, he owed me money, and we don't feel that's a valid claim, we didn't think the person owed money, then it's contested, essentially. So it's either paid off or disallowed. and contested. So those are but most of the time in a more straightforward situation, there aren't creditors' claims, or we just pay them off shortly thereafter after the 4-month period passes. It gets quite complicated if the assets of a deceased person exceed the debts. That's a topic for another video. But in that instance, you don't necessarily, you have to pay off creditors so that there's priority in who gets paid first. And since not everybody's getting paid in full, people get paid, proportionate amounts of what they're owed depending upon how priority their claim is. So, if you have like you back taxes, or you had student loan debt with the government, those are more priority claimants over Visa, for example. Okay, so under after the creditors period passes, we work on preparing an inventory of what the decedent owned as of the date of death. That's what the inventory says. And this document gets distributed to the interested persons, and it's due at the later of 9 months after death. So 9 months after the person died, or if it's later, 6 months after the personal representative is appointed by the court. So you have to look at it and see which one of those two scenarios is longer, and that's the date the inventory is due. You can always submit it to the interested persons before then, but that's your deadline to distribute that. And then also in this period, we're preparing what's called a final account, which is basically an itemization of what happened during the estate administration. It basically says, we paid these different expenses, we paid these different debts, we had this appreciation in property, maybe we got a dividend payment on something, maybe we got a refund on a tax payment. So it talks about everything that went in and out of the estate during the administration. And then it shows cash on hand, and then shows, okay, now these two beneficiaries of the estate are set to inherit the cash, and so it's going to get split 2 ways. So the final account basically lays that all out in number format. That final account is supposed to be distributed to the beneficiaries. And after the inventory, final account are prepared, all the debts paid, all the assets are collected and distributed, then at that point, we can close probate and finish the whole process. So that's probate in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. And if you thought this video was helpful, please share it with a friend or family member who you think might enjoy watching it. Take care.